This is my temperature and altitude presentation. So the temperature, there's two categories, heat and cold. So for these we'll be talking about responses, effects and sporting performance for both categories. So firstly, talking about responses. When an athlete becomes too hot, their body's response is to vasodilate. This will allow blood vessels to relax and blood flow will therefore increase. Blood flow increasing will then decrease blood pressure. Vasodilation will also help to cool the skin as cold blood will flow to the area. Sweat glands will then be triggered as well. This will leave a layer of liquid on the skin to evaporate and in turn then cooling the skin as it basically is losing a layer. Hairs will lay flat to cool the skin as they fall. Heart rate will increase to get blood flowing to areas such as the skin to cool it. Breathing rate will also increase to help the gases exchange, which in turn will promote blood flow. Ventilation will also increase to aid gases exchange. When an athlete becomes too cold, they will have different effects, such as the hairs on their skin will stick up. Due to this, the hairs will pick up heat. The athlete may start shivering due to the little movements. This will then warm them up. Blood vessels will vasoconstrict to help stop blood flowing to the surface of the skin. Breathing rate and heart rate will increase, therefore to warm the athlete up by fueling the shivering movement, helping to fuel the athlete to start exercising at higher intensity, which will warm them up. So effects such as heart rate, breathing rate and ventilation. Heart rate will increase both when cold and hot. When cold, it will increase to help promote movements to therefore warm up the athlete. Fuel movements such as shivering as well. When hot, heart rate will increase to help promote blood flow to the skin to cool the body. Breathing rate will increase when cold to help increase gases exchange to then be delivered to muscles, which will then be able to perform the exercise at a higher intensity to warm up the athlete. Breathing rate will also increase when hot to help increase gases exchange, in turn allowing more fresh cold blood to be distributed to the skin. Along with this, ventilation will increase to therefore increase breathing rate for both hot and cold. During sporting performance, cooling aids can be used. So the cooling aids such as the cooling clothing, ice baths and ice drinks can all be used to cool the athlete down whilst before or after exercising in the cold, in the hot. When exercising in extreme temperature, the athletes will become used to this. Therefore, they'll be able to work at a higher intensity at these levels of temperature, either really hot or really cold. This is due to the athlete's body systems adjusting to the weather, such as the respiratory system increasing, breathing rate, and ventilation, while the cardiovascular system will increase to promote blood flow to other cool areas of the skin or to distribute red blood cells to allow an athlete to exercise more when cold to warm up. Okay. So altitude. During Mexico City Olympics, aerobic events struggled to set new world records while anaerobic events set new world records in most events. The reason for this is that Mexico is at altitude. This means long distance athletes will struggle due to the fact the oxygen is greatly dispersed at altitude and the athletes therefore cannot saturate and use the oxygen in the air. Due to the oxygen being greatly dispersed, the short distance events such as long jump and sprints and stuff like this were helped as there was kind of less particles in the air, which made them more aerodynamic when gliding through the air. So for a long jump, when they jumped up as far as they can, they glided for longer. Sprinters also therefore could run faster as they could travel through the air quicker, as there was not as much like friction caused by the air particles. Obviously, this is elite athletes, so this would make a difference, whereas for non-elite athletes, this may not affect their sprint. So why go to altitude? Athletes can go to altitude to aid their long distance events. So the altitude helps them to become more efficient while having less oxygen available for use. This will therefore increase their red blood cell count, to therefore account for the decrease in oxygen that is accessible. When at altitude, some people have different effects from the thinner air, which means that they can become sick. In the rest of the presentation, I will explain responses of being at altitude and effects of being at altitude. So firstly, looking at effects. When at altitude, there is a reduction in partial pressure, which means the athletes cannot use the same amount of oxygen as they are used to at sea level. This means the athletes cannot exercise at a high intensity for long periods of time. If they do, heart rate can dramatically increase, along with breathing rate, to allow for the decrease of oxygen in the air, therefore trying to get more oxygen in with a higher breathing rate. Due to this, heart rate will also have to increase to distribute the increase of oxygen and air being breathed into the body. So basically the reduction means that athletes have to breathe faster, their heart needs to work faster than distribute the air that's breathed in, and this will therefore fatigue them quicker. The second effect is a reduced maximum oxygen uptake. So due to the reduction of oxygen in the air, this means that less oxygen can be used to fuel muscle contractions, therefore meaning that athletes cannot exercise for the same periods of time when compared to at sea level. So if they were working really hard at altitude, they'll fatigue a lot quicker than they would do normally if they're at sea level. So therefore, heart rate increases and so does breathing rate to accommodate for the lack of oxygen. So if they are at altitude, heart rate and breathing rate will dramatically increase, therefore allow for this reduction in maximum oxygen uptake. So responses, due to the decrease of oxygen levels at altitude, it means that athletes increase their red blood cell count. Due to lower levels, this means their body has to adapt to be able to work at lower levels, so therefore they increase the amount of red blood cells to try and allow the athlete to work for longer. This can allow the athlete to utilize low levels of oxygen when at altitude. This will therefore aid their fitness levels when at sea level, as they can utilize more oxygen than they could before altitude training. So therefore, when they're at altitude, there will be an increase of heart rate, breathing rate, exertion, ventilation, blood pressure. But when they come back to sea level, these responses will be a lot lower, so there will be a decrease in these as they will feel physically fitter. The aerobic benefits of altitude is that it will help the athletes to use more oxygen, as we said, at sea level. Benefits of anaerobic is that the air is thinner, so elite athletes will find this a good benefit due to the fact they can move through the air particles at a faster rate. So therefore, when at sea level, there will be a decrease in heart rate, breathing rate, exertion, ventilation, blood pressure, due to the fact that the athletes coming back from altitude will be fitter and they'll be able to utilize more oxygen in the air. So therefore, all of these will decrease and the athlete will find it easier to exercise at these levels. So for sporting performance, the sporting performance of being at altitude is that it will make exercising at sea level easier. This is the benefit due to the fact that athletes will be able to utilize a greater amount of oxygen when at sea level, as they have had to utilize the oxygen at altitude, and they struggle to do this, then their bodies adapt, and then they'll find this easier. So then when they come back to sea level, they'll be able to utilize even more oxygen. They'll therefore be able to perform exercises with ease and be able to beat their personal bests and all their records they've set once they have performed their altitude training. So this could be really a big benefit, and elite athletes really will use altitude training, such as Mo Farah and all the cyclists, because it really does increase the red blood cell count. Anaerobic exercises will aid the altitude training due to the fact they will glide through the air as it is thinner, so there's less particles in the air, and the oxygen is greatly dispersed, which therefore means that the sprinters and long jumpers can travel through the air a lot faster.